Hi again, everyone. Welcome back to the Columbus School of Chinese here in Columbus, Ohio, for another episode of Ask a Chinese Teacher. On this episode, I want to continue talking about Chinese characters, but today, in particular, I'll focus on 5 of the basic guidelines for stroke order. Now, if you watched our previous episodes, you know that we mentioned stroke order is important for a few reasons. For one, it makes your characters look better. For 2, it makes them more legible to someone else trying to read your handwriting, or if you're using your fingertip to write in a character on your phone, it makes it more legible for the algorithm in your phone. But most importantly to a learner, it helps you remember them easier. So today I have 5 of the most important guidelines for writing Chinese characters with the correct stroke order. And if you stay tuned until the end, I'll even have a pop quiz for you guys to see how well you understood what I went through. But before I get into that, if you'd like to learn more about what we do here at the Columbus School of Chinese, including if there are online or in-person classes available for you, you can visit us at columbuschoolofchinese.com or like our Facebook page. Let's get started. Okay, so here we are. These are my most fundamental 5 guidelines for stroke order. I'll give you a couple examples of each, and then like I mentioned at the end, we'll let you decide how these characters are written. All right. So the first one is left to right. Sorry, lefties, you might get a little more ink on your hand, but the vast majority of the time, we're starting on the left side and going right. This is the numeral number 1. The numeral number 2, numeral number 3, etc., etc. But even for characters with a left side and a right side, the left side goes first, then the right side. Left to right, basic guideline number 1. Next, top to bottom. As you might have noticed over here, as I went down this character, the top one came first, then the middle, then the bottom. Another example. Chuan. So both left to right and top to bottom are evident right here. We start at the top, go down. Start at the top, go down. Top, down. Even more complex characters, for example, E. We have this top part, then the middle part, then the bottom part. Top to bottom. All right? That's another general guideline. Next, horizontal before vertical. Anytime you see a cross section, the horizontal line comes first. Horizontal lines, of course, are going from left to right. So there's our first stroke, then our vertical stroke, right? This is the number 10. You'll see this repeated in all kinds of characters. For example, our tree radical, mu, wood, tree. Other ones as well, for example, we have these 3 horizontal lines, even one with a hook, a downward hook at the end before the vertical at the end. All right. Next, middle before symmetrical sides. Now these can be very symmetrical sides or they can be relatively symmetrical sides, but if they're minor strokes compared to what comes in the middle is going to go first. For example, the character xiao for small. That middle comes first. We have these 2 relatively symmetrical sides. Those will come next. Which side comes first? Let's follow our previous rule, left to right. So the middle, then left side, right side. Same thing for the character for water. We have our middle, then the left side, then the right side. Not as symmetrical, but still the rule applies. You can sort of also see this rule in mu as well. So we have our crosshairs, and then out of these 2 sides, which one come first? Left, then right. Okay? 好的. Next, and this is kind of the most complicated. I kind of took a couple rules and put them together here. Enclosures. You'll see lots of boxes, enclosures in Chinese characters. Here is the rule. Number one, when we make an enclosure, we do the left side. Does it go top to bottom or bottom to top? Correct. You should be referring to these previous guidelines if you're not sure which way you should be going. 好. So we have our left side. What comes next? The top and the right side together without lifting your pen. This is a single stroke. So we have the top and the right side. Good. Notice it is not closed. That's going to come at the end. 好. So we have our left side, our top and right sides. Next comes contents. And I have this here in parentheses because you'll not always have contents. Let's go with one character that has a contents, right? So following my other guidelines, more or less, I have my contents all filled in. Everything that needs to go on the inside of this box is now finished. Once that's done, once whatever the contents is done, do you finally put the bottom in? Why is bottom in parentheses? You won't always have a bottom to your enclosure. So let's give an example of an enclosure without a bottom. This is the character Xiang. In this case, there is no bottom to the enclosure, but this is still an enclosure. We had to do the left side, top and right side before we did the contents. Okay, now let's do one with a bottom, but there's no contents to fill in. So the most classic example is this guy here. This is 口 or mouth. You'll see this in a lot of characters that have to do with speaking or language or characters that have grammatical function in the sentence. What guidelines does this follow? So we have the left side, the top and right, and then since there's no contents, we can go ahead and just close it. Notice that when I closed it on the bottom, I was going from left to right. When I did this top right, I was going from left to right, and then from top down. I can tell you from experience, when students don't follow this exactly, and they get lazy, and maybe go like this, or any other deviation from this, the teacher can tell. And if they're a good teacher, they will mark points off. So make sure that you are following this guideline here. All right? Now time for a pop quiz. Okay, this should be pretty familiar to beginners. This is the second person pronoun ni, you, right? Ni. How should we go about writing this character? Let me give myself a nice standard character box here, slightly taller than it is wide. Okay, so we have this left side. We know left comes before right, so let's do the left side. We have a stroke that is on top of another one. Therefore, we should be following this general guideline as well. Okay, stroke 1, stroke 2. Good, we have our left side done. Now we can move on to the right. Again, we have a top part here and a bottom part here of the right side. Let's do the top part first. Which one comes first? The one on the left. And we're going to go right, left to right. Okay, now on this bottom part, we have a middle line and two symmetrical sides. What happens here? Middle before symmetrical sides. And the left one comes before the right one. So far, so good? Okay, good. 好, Next. This one, if you saw it for the first time, might be a little bit confusing. But if you know the trick, all you need to do is repeat the same thing 3 times. I actually gave the character you need to repeat 3 times when I was doing my introduction of the guidelines, all right? So we have a crosshair, and then we have a left and a right, relatively symmetrical thing going on here. So what happens when we have a crosshair? Horizontal before vertical. And which one of these should I do first? The top one. You might be thinking, shouldn't left be going before right? We have a left one here. But this isn't the left of the entire character. This is the top of the entire character. So this is a top. Then we'll move on to this one, then this one. Okay? How? So crosshair, horizontal before vertical. Then a left side before a right side. There it is. Now we just repeat. Whereas this one is a little bit wider, we have these 2 other iterations of this same shape are going to be taller and skinnier. So crosshair, horizontal before vertical, then the left, then the right. Horizontal before vertical, left, then the right. Right? How would we have done? So far so good. So far 2 for 2. Excellent. How? Next. Hui, to return. We have an enclosure inside of an enclosure. How should we deal with this? Well, first of all, this is contents of the bigger enclosure. So that should not be dealt with until we have the left side and the top/right side of the bigger overall enclosure. So we have our left side going from up, down, coming back to this original point, the top and the right. Okay, now we're not going to close it until we do contents. What is the contents? It is a smaller enclosure. So the left first, then the top right. Now, before we close it, we have to deal with the contents of this smaller one. Is there any contents? No. So we can close it. There's nothing else in there. We are done. Excellent. So we have this smaller enclosure done. Is there anything else we need to do to the inside of this bigger enclosure? No. We're done with it. So, if there's a bottom, we can finally close it. Let's do that. There you go. Again, a little bit quicker. We have the sides and top of our enclosure, then the contents, then finally, we close it at the bottom. How? Last one. This is a character every beginner does not know. So, actually, this is not even a real character. This is a character that it's actually a kind of noodle dish whose name is in a dialect, a non-Mandarin dialect of Chinese. So they decided to make up a character for it because the pronunciation is not a valid pronunciation in Pinyin. So in Pinyin, in the Pinyin system, there is no such thing as a B-I-A-N-G. But that is how this made-up character is pronounced. Most people recognize this as, oh, okay, that's that special noodle dish from Xi'an. Is there a stroke order to this? Probably. But as it's made up, I won't be trying. Another reason why I bring this up is this is kind of the Chinese culture own joke on itself, its own recognition that characters are hard and stroke order can be difficult and not always straightforward. So Chinese people also know that characters are hard to some degree.